Review product provided by Sony. 15 districts 100% completed. 68 suits unlocked, 34 for Miles Morales and 34 for Peter Parker. 5 spider gadgets fully upgraded. 62 skills purchased across 3 separate skill trees. 42 spider bots found all across New York City. 42 trophies earned, including that platinum, and all this took me about 31 hours of total playtime. And in the end, I enjoyed every single New York minute. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Spider-Man fever has never been higher, and honestly, like having an alien symbiote suit that gives me superpowers, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has the potential to be a console-defining superhero game, a PlayStation 5 exclusive masterpiece that answers the question, what should a sequel do? Based on this alone, it'll be no surprise to any of you out there that Spider-Man 2 absolutely earns my completionist rating of completed. But when we're talking about Spider-Man as a whole, there's one theme that's kind of been said as a meme from the very beginning of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. With great power comes great responsibility. I feel like that has been resonant throughout all of the Spider-Man media for the last 2 decades. But Spider-Man 2 does something a little bit different, and it kind of shaped my entire opinion of why I love this game so much. It's no longer, with great power comes great responsibility. The answer now is, or the statement now should be, with great power comes great consequence. And that's what Spider-Man 2 is all about. Let's begin.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner! Game over! Wake up! Last one standing wins!
Spider-Man's presence and pop culture influence is undeniable at this point. From classic comics, to the 90s animated show, to the Sam Raimi movies, to the Spider-Verse films. The character has been deeply explored and re-explored from seemingly every angle, and Spidey's had his fair share of video games too, across entire console generations. But when Sony and Insomniac put their stamp on Spider-Man in 2018, they pushed the character to new heights in video game form, eventually leading us to this point today. It's no easy thing to make a game where the player, say it with me now, really feels like Spider-Man. But damn if Insomniac didn't nail it. The developers proved that even if players had slipped on the blue and red tights before, they'd never done it quite like this. Marvel's Spider-Man was a massive love letter to a legacy character, and also Marvel Comics in general. The game had incredible feeling momentum, fun combat, and dozens upon dozens of collectibles, Easter eggs, and of course, references. I enjoyed the experience a lot, but in-game benchmarks pushed the completion experience just a little bit too far for me to recommend completing the full game. So I gave the original my rating of finish it. I even went back and completed the surprisingly extensive DLC pack. And then came Spider-Man Miles Morales. Just 2 years after Insomniac's first stab at the character, they released this shorter, more streamlined game that still hits some amazing high notes. In the first Spider-Man, players witness Miles' origin, his canon event, if you will. But Spider-Man Miles Morales showed that he was ready to stand on his own as not just the hero of Harlem, but of the Big Apple itself. I fell in love with Miles and gave this game a completionist rating of completed. So here we are now, after years of anticipation, with a true Spider-Man sequel. I had a lot of questions and expectations leading up to this game's release. Even after attending an awesome preview event hosted by Sony, thank you Sony, please invite me to more of these, I hope you like this video, I wasn't sure how to feel about this game. The developers made it a point to emphasize the scope and scale, more protagonists, more boroughs of New York to explore, more classic villains to clobber. I couldn't help but wonder, would it just be more for the sake of more? And how much mileage can the marketing department get out of 19 inches of Venom? I'm gonna do my best to keep this video spoiler light. But if you're watching this, I'm going to assume you've at least played the first 2 games, or even seen one or more of the many Spider-Man films. This sequel picks up sometime after Miles and Peter have been sharing spider duties across New York. Peter has grown into the role of mentor for Miles, even if he doesn't always feel up to the task. As always, Peter Parker is struggling to balance his personal life and his relationship with MJ with that of a high-flying superhero. And in Miles' world, things are picking up too. He's starting to think about his life as an adult, but he's stuck on a college application essay where he must write about himself. Who is he outside of being Spider-Man? Will he always feel like he's in the shadow of the original? Both Spider-Men are also grappling with grief in their own ways. Peter is barely taking care of Aunt May's old house after her death, and Miles is still struggling with how to grieve with the loss of his father, carelessly killed in front of him by Mr. Negative. All of the groundwork has been laid to really deliver on a heartfelt, original Spider-Man story. Could Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 follow the footsteps of iconic Spidey sequels like Raimi's Spider-Man 2 or Across the Spider-Verse? Short answer, holy shit, yes, yes it could, and yes it does. Spider-Man 2 is the confident called shot that Insomniac has been dying to make. If the first game was them planting a flag and proving they could do the damn thing, and Miles Morales was them showing they could streamline their own formula and deliver on the soul of Spider-Man with the exaggerated swagger of a confident developer, then Spider-Man 2 is the complete package. It synthesizes great gameplay ideas, thoughtful storytelling, and the power of technology to manifest a game that I couldn't help but complete. The completion journey is less arduous than it appears. New York, aka the city that never sleeps, is packed full of things to do. Spider-Man 2 follows the general structure of the previous Insomniac Spider-Man games. It's a third-person action game with lots of combat and exploration, punctuated by incredible city-spanning superhero set-piece moments. This time around, we've expanded beyond just Manhattan and Harlem to include Astoria, downtown Queens, Little Odessa, Williamsburg, and downtown Brooklyn. The game breaks up the map into 14 separate districts, and each district has its own set of goals and objectives to complete. In every district, you'll do everything from fight in ranked combat challenges called Mysteriums, to perform science experiments / minigames where you place tiles on a grid or shoot digital bees, to using some new abilities to chase flying drones throughout the air. There are several sprawling side quests with intriguing outcomes, as well as more limited friendly neighborhood Spider-Man requests that the boys can accept on their phones, like their DoorDash drivers. And these friendly neighborhood Spider-Man requests feel a lot more personal to what these stories are. Some of these side quests harken back to the original games, continuing Peter and Miles' journey to help those they know and love. Finishing missions and completing side quests will net you currency in the form of different tokens and tech parts, which both Spider-Men can use to upgrade their tech and abilities. You'll also earn XP to level up, slowly making your way towards the max level of 60, earning skill points that you can use to buy new skills in one of 3 separate skill trees. One for Peter Parker, one for Miles Morales, and one share between the both of them. It's important to note that when you level up one Spider-Man, you level up all of them. And then we've got the suits, the glorious, glorious suits. Suits unlock at a pretty rapid pace, usually one for Peter or Miles every level or 2. Some of these are also rewarded for completing certain quest chains. Each one is awesome in their own way. The suits serve as reference points for Spider-Man's comic and film history, and they look so rad as hell all the time, making them amazing unlockables no matter where you're coming from. Spider-Man 2 also ups the ante by letting the player spend in-game currency to purchase additional palettes and patterns for most suits. There are some really unique color schemes and outfits going on here, and only completionists will see them all. Every district completed, every suit purchased, every upgrade unlocked contributes towards an in-game completion percentage on your save file. And this being a Sony first-party title, there are also 42 trophies to earn, including the Platinum. And if you play like I did, doing as much as possible in every district between big story beats, you will likely hit that Platinum with no problems whatsoever. Because Spider-Man 2 does the thing that I hope every game does: reward the player the whole way through and make the journey feel worth it. It's also one of the most thematically tight games I have played this year, one that actually earns its tagline, "Be greater together." Spider-Man 2 is all about fluidity and balance. The way it achieves that by leveraging the power of the PS5 is stunning. Spider-Man has a few new tricks up his spandex sleeve that make investigating New York simple satisfying, and sleeker than ever. The movement and gameplay builds off the already solid foundation of the previous titles in ways that feels exciting and innovative. Spider-Man 2 lays all of its cards on the table in its intro opening battle. Instead of fighting Kingpin or wrangling the Rhino, Peter and Miles together must take down the Sandman, who's been driven into a frenzy and is destroying entire city blocks. It's an epically cinematic showdown, and it looks and feels smooth as butter. Best of all, it balances banter with gameplay in a way that feels earned. By the end of this fight, I was basically pumping my fist and yelling, "Science, bitch!" as sweeping orchestral music played. In this fight, the player flips between Peter and Miles seamlessly. Miles and Peter support each other and work together to take down this ultra-powerful foe in a way that reminds the player that these boys are super nerds and friends in the best way possible. You even get the chance to try out one of Spider-Man's new toys after Sandman flings you 30 stories into the air, the web wings. This is essentially a squirrel suit, though Spider-Man would never call it that in a million years. These wings let you glide through the air at incredible speeds, riding wind tunnels and air currents between skyscrapers and whipping around corners like a f***ing rocket. Once those came into play in the intro, I knew that moving around the city would never feel boring. That word, feel. People might gloss over this. The haptic feedback in the game is unreal. I know, it's a bit of a gimmick to some, but it works, and it's awesome. Every time you shoot a web and swing around a building, you'll feel it in your fingers. In fact, the DualSense adds a lot to the overall experience this time around, especially once you get into the real meat of the story. Every tiny sound that comes out of the speaker and every subtle rumble makes the game feel more immersive than ever. This is a game design problem that I didn't even know I wanted solved. But why shouldn't a game feel so awesome to control? After the fight against Sandman, you're tasked with doing a bit of cleanup, including taking everyone's favorite blowhard, J. Jonah Jameson, to an ambulance and putting out a few fires. This is an extremely elegant intro, one that subtly teaches you almost every type of activity that you will engage in. It speaks to the overall sense that the devs wanted the whole completion experience to feel as seamless as possible. Okay, so I have to talk about Insomniac's take on fast travel. It might be my favorite fast travel in any game that's ever existed. In their previous Spider-Man titles, you could send Spidey on the subway to reach a different district if you did not want to swing all the way across town. Here, once you complete a certain amount of district tasks, you are rewarded with the ability to fast travel to that district anywhere on the map. But why would you want to do that when movement feels so incredible? I'll tell you why. Because fast travel is near instant and cinematic as hell. You can basically choose any street or building or location on the map, pinpoint it specifically where you want to go, and within 2 seconds, you'll literally swing into action like a film. You don't just drop in the middle of the district or some predetermined point. You choose where you want to be, down to the intersection practically, and the game reacts accordingly. Some part of me has been waiting for a feature like this since the dawn of the PS5, and it feels amazing to have that patience rewarded. This also reinforces the idea that you can switch between Peter and Miles anytime you want and not really break any immersion. Outside of specific chapters of the story and side missions that are locked to either Peter or Miles, you can choose which Spider-Man you want to explore New York with. And sometime your spider compatriot or other friends will drop in and help you when you're cleaning up these streets. It's really rad to have a spider pal help you web up some foes and then share a high five or shoot finger guns at each other before zipping off to do their own thing. Moments like this make me sure that Insomniac was thinking of implementing some kind of co-op feature at first. How rad would it be to have shared a Spider-Man game where you could pop into a buddy's version of New York and help them take care of business? And don't try and tell me Marvel's Avengers does that. You can't even get that game anymore. I've been there, I know. Swapping between characters is simple, and each Spider-Man feels distinct from the other. You have some customization options. You can choose between which abilities you want to equip once you unlock them at certain points in the story. Each ability is helpful, and I enjoyed having the freedom to change my loadout whenever I wanted. It should come as no surprise to anyone that this game looks and runs amazing, but I still found myself impressed by dozens of tiny details. Reflections and rain look insane. This game even does the God of War thing, where if you're having a conversation with MJ or Genki on your spider phone and decide to stop and flatten some goons, Miles or Peter will cut off the conversation short and then call the character back later on to resume said conversation. It's a super smart way to ensure the player does not miss important information. Now, in this video, you might see some weird visual things here and there. To be clear, I was given a review copy of the game before the game was officially out, meaning there's bound to be bugs. In the time that I've been playing this game, there have been 2 full patches that have fixed almost everything in this game. What I'm saying is, my footage does not do this game enough justice with how good the game looks. Know that it looks even better and runs even smoother than it already did thanks to those patches. So there's an early in-game set piece that involves flying through the air and passing through some magic portals that had my jaw on the floor with just how cool it felt to play. There is so much creativity and thought put into every set piece and boss battle that helps Spider-Man 2 stand tall. There seems to be less spider stealth here than in previous games, and that's fine, honestly. Even the trophies reflect this. There's one for taking down enemies using your web line tool, but it's only 25 enemies. Instead, the story keeps up its momentum and focuses on action. Music and sound design are a highlight. I especially love the hip-hop beats that play whenever Miles gets into the swing of things. The voice actors, especially Yuri Lowenthal as Peter and Najee Jeter as Miles, are still perfectly cast, regardless of how you might feel about the face swapping they did with Peter. If you completed the first 2 Insomniac Spider-Man games, much of the completion process will still feel pretty similar. PSA, if you did not love the first Spider-Man game, you probably won't love this one. And that's fine. People might critique this game by saying that it's too similar to the first, but I did not view that as a negative at all. In fact, I appreciate how Insomniac doubled down on their formula. They've made their own Spider canon, and by creating it with complete confidence, have earned the right to take huge swings with massive payoffs. The result is a game that feels better than ever to play, and that also hits emotional beats harder and more sincerely than I initially expected. Superhero stories tend to follow certain tropes, right? We've all heard, with great power comes great responsibility, a million times at this point, in a million different ways when it comes to Spider-Man. But the way Spider-Man 2 plays with tropes and expectations to illustrate its themes is incredible. This game manages to overcome the struggle that Spider-Man himself often faces: how to find balance between work, play, and satisfaction. Obviously, completing the story is a linear project, like this is a given. And when it's paced as well as this one is, I'm super grateful. The conflicts are established right up front. Can Peter invest in an actual relationship with MJ? Can he learn to accept help from others? Can he be supportive to his long-suffering buddy, Harry Osborn, and mentor Miles at the same time? On Miles' end, he's stepping into adulthood with all the anxiety that entails with that. Does he want to go to college? Can he ask out the girl that he's been crushing on for forever? Can he express his individuality and heritage as Spider-Man, even though he's not the only one? The way that the stories of each individual Spider-Man intersect and influence the main plot is extremely well executed. It turns out Sandman didn't go on a rampage for no reason. He was being hunted. 6 months earlier, an international group of vicious killers led by Kraven the Hunter set their sights on New York City as the ultimate hunting ground. Kraven wants what every guy wants: to find and fight the most dangerous things alive so he can prove that he's the ultimate predator. Kraven might seem like a weird deep-cut villain to be the antagonist of Spider-Man 2, but the game establishes that he is a force to be reckoned with. No spoilers for me, but remember when Thanos took out Hulk in Infinity War and you thought, oh shit, this guy is for real? Kraven has a moment like that early on that proves that he's a real threat to Peter, Miles, and all of New York. This also introduces players to one of the newest factions they'll be fighting: Kraven's Hunters. These elite fighters use traps, nets, robo-birds, and robo-dogs, and have amazing mobility that makes them very fun and occasionally difficult to fight. As the plot surges forward and the stakes grow even higher, Peter's relationships get tested. Harry Osborn, previously suffering from a terminal illness, has a new lease on life thanks to an alien symbiote suit that gives him great strength. But those closest to him start to notice a change in personality. Eventually, Pete has the chance to wear the suit for himself, and from then on, the game is at its most exciting and most interesting. The way the story folds in on one of the most iconic villains in Spider-Man history is accomplished masterfully. At a certain point, it's the symbiote's story, and it rules. Miles can see the cracks starting to form in Peter's personality, and it's heartbreaking how real their relationship feels. As a player, I could see how if these guys just talked to each other a little bit more, they'd probably be able to solve all of their conflicts and figure out how to best help each other. Instead, Pete pushes Miles away. Miles gets a little resentful and becomes reluctant to ask for Peter's advice when he needs it most. You'll definitely want the full context of Miles' journey to appreciate his arc. If you haven't done a refresher playthrough of Miles Morales or watched the latest films, maybe do that before playing this game because it will make you appreciate his character growth and struggles that much more. This game is about far more than just being a hero and saving the day. It isn't so black and white, despite Peter's slick new outfit. Instead, this game thrives by drawing attention to the gray areas of life. The main story punches in on these areas, especially in regards to Peter, Mary Jane, and Harry. These lifelong friends have a lot of baggage and unresolved traumas that keep popping up. Life gets messy, especially when you're spreading yourself too thin. And I really felt Peter's pain and anxiety as the game progressed. It's sort of a spider cliche at this point, but when the symbiote suit starts to draw out Peter's more aggressive personality and heightens what's already in his heart, I found myself saying, dude, same, way more often than you might think. Though by the end of the game, there were definitely some moments when I asked myself, yo, where the hell are the Avengers? The Fantastic Four? Doctor Strange? They've got their offices right here in Manhattan, baby! Somebody gets Tony Stark on the line. No wonder Spider-Man feels overburdened. He's taking on too much, and no one is even offering an extending hand. Every character, supervillains included, is on a quest to find and redeem themselves in some capacities. I especially appreciated Mr. Negative's role in the story, and how his relationship with Miles still reverberates after the events of the first Spider-Man games. Completing this game emphasized just how much the developers did not want Spider-Man 2 to simply be, okay, now you're playing as Miles, now you're playing as Peter, now you're playing as Miles, and now you're playing as Peter. They give every character some satisfying character development. I appreciated how well written and neatly tied together this experience feels. Completing every side quest adds to this. Some missions have giant stakes. The Flame mission is the standout as we learn the fate of Peter's one-time cop ally Yuri Watanabe and see the old age struggle of vigilantism versus the criminal justice system. Others are just about fleshing out what it's like to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, whatever that means. Redemption and restoration of the soul are deftly weaved into every aspect of the narrative. As Peter fights to remain balanced and teeters on the edge of succumbing to darker impulses, Miles rises up. Maybe there's another path for some of these criminals. Maybe there's a chance for Spider-Man to help them reform. Insomniac commits wholeheartedly to these themes, and the game is better for it. The main story has some great twists and turns, and I was surprised by how many gameplay sections don't star Peter or Miles in their Spider-Man suits. This is where the game really touches the heart of the player. When you're exploring back alleys as the deaf student Haley, or investigating something serious as MJ. I know this isn't the first time players step into MJ's shoes, but she feels like she has a little more agency this time around. Stealth sections might not be for everyone, but they serve to switch up the gameplay and provide yet another perspective. However, I gotta say it, and I mean no disrespect, some of Mary Jane's sections serve to seriously undercut the threat of Kraven's hunters. These enemies are hardened criminals who have hunted literal supervillains, and you're telling me that they can be distracted and defeated by a journalist with a taser? Did Silver Sable train Mary Jane to the peak of physical perfection? That aside, I found myself engrossed in every side quest and main mission. All throughout my 31 hours, I asked myself, is there more to do? Can I do more? Should I do more? That's how Spidey feels on a regular basis. But as a completionist, I never once felt overwhelmed. Every little thing feels so rewarding, so that it never felt like I was going out of my way or doing something out of obligation. Both Spider-Men may feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, but all I felt as I completed this game was elation. All this game really had to do to be a successful sequel was tell a fun story and have improved gameplay that built off what the other titles did. The fact that it does that and more is just icing on the cake, and completionists can rejoice. The game subtly encourages you to complete the entire thing, and it never once feels like a chore. There are no in-game benchmarks to overcome that arbitrarily drag out the experience. Instead, you always feel like you're making progress. At the very beginning of the game, I was worried at how stingingly the game was handing out tokens and skill points, and I wasn't sure what to invest in. But by chasing that completion high, I found the game clarified what to focus on. One of the most fun and difficult challenges to overcome are Quentin Beck's Mysteriums, which you can only complete as Miles. These little carnival attractions may seem innocent enough, but once you step inside, you must face the wrath of Mysterio in different combat scenarios. Now, these are no joke. Every Mysterium has 3 rankings, and to earn a gold medal and reap the highest rewards, you have to know exactly what you're doing in combat. But completing these helped focus my attention. I used these Mysteriums to train myself to become a beast on the battlefield, and use the skill points I earned to become even more effective. I found myself excelling at aerial combat, so I put points into powering up my air attacks until I could knock enemies out in 2 punches. Defeating 20 enemies in less than 1 minute might sound impossible, but hey, it's Spider-Man. He never says no to the impossible. And then there are some trophies that seem intimidating at first, like using your web wings to glide from the financial district all the way to Astoria. But rather than be discouraged, I found myself empowered to grab these trophies. Every challenge feels rewarding because the game teaches you exactly what you need to do and how to rise to the occasion. No matter the quest line, you're bound to earn something cool that fleshes out the Insomniac Spider-Verse. I found myself most compelled by the stuff that showed how Peter and Miles were growing in their roles as Spider-Man. At every turn, narrative and gameplay reinforce each other until the two things feel inextricable. Even the most impossible conundrum of a semi-open world game losing urgency is basically solved via narrative in Spider-Man 2. You know how in a lot of games like this, the plot will seem super urgent, but you as the player character can just kind of put things off until you're ready to move on? Here, the urge to veer off the beaten path and do something else always feels justified. Like, when Peter is feeling the power and influence of the symbiote suit, of course he'd ignore the pleas of Dr. Connors to come into the lab right away in favor of beating up randos or solving a violent crime. It just works. And Miles feeling shunned by Peter and taking out those feelings of aggression and loneliness by hunting down criminals or giving back to his community also feels very in character. Both Spider-Men share the spotlight in a way that doesn't feel forced. They drift apart, then return to each other, stronger than ever. Insomniac managed to find and maintain a perfect balance. I'm reminded of something Aunt May says to Peter. Balance is a process, not a destination. Through iteration and smart, compelling game design, the developers nail what makes Spider-Man great. One common complaint about this game may be that it actually feels short, but honestly, I think Spider-Man 2 is the perfect length. It took me 31 hours to complete this game fully, and admittedly it was a bit casually, and I'd rather have 31 hours of thought-provoking thrill rides rather than doubling that time playing something less fulfilling. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Every single task in this game feels rewarding. Even when I was doing as much as possible on the way to the end game, I never grew tired of chasing down a speeding car or zooming through wind tunnels to catch a drone. Even basic trash mobs get more interesting as the game goes on, and different enemy varieties start showing up. I was able to reach level 60 and unlock the entire skill tree with great ease. You get a trophy for doing so, but there's no big reward in-game other than the knowledge that now each of your Spider-Men are at the peak of their abilities. It's the same with unlocking all 25 abilities for all 5 gadgets. I had more than enough tokens and tech parts to unlock everything I needed by the end of the game. No farming required at all. The Mysterium combat challenges are incredibly fun and easy to complete once you have all the abilities and skills. You don't have to earn gold medals on all of them for the trophy, but I found myself wanting to do so because I enjoyed each little battlefield so much. Many Mysteriums even shift partway through to become even more challenging. Not only do you get an awesome super finishing every Mysterium, you get some fun voice memos that provide a window into the psyche of poor Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. The other missions and friendly neighborhood Spider-Man requests all have trophies associated with them, and in-game rewards too. Sometimes the reward is a story beat that emphasizes some character growth, like the end of Uncle Aaron's side quest. Other times, it's an awesome teaser for future Insomniac-inspired Spider-Man content, like the end of the Flame missions. And sometimes the reward is straight up culture. Why yes, I do want to read some Langston Hughes poetry and learn about Josephine Baker and jazz music in a cool Harlem museum. Unlocking every suit is a reward in itself, and you do earn a trophy for finding all 68. Each suit is an amazing reference to something from the vast Spider-Man sea, whether it's a specific moment from the plot of the game, or a comic book storyline, or even a costume for one of the many movies. I found myself swapping suits all the time, just for the fun of it, because they all look awesome. Really, the only collectible that gave me trouble were the spider bots. There's a whole bunch of these little bastards skidding around the buildings or under bridges or way up in the sky, and they can be tricky to find. You have to look out for those big energy pulses, and once you get close enough, you can feel that haptic feedback in your controller and just follow the rumbles. However, these don't give you anything in-game. You can view them in the menu, and yes, they're cute. Each one is themed around a different Spider-Man character, and finding them all rewards you with a very cool, very meta cutscene. This game is about as completion friendly as it gets. You always know exactly what you're missing in any given district, and there's even a suit tech traversal skill called All-Seeing that is extremely useful. All-Seeing lets you see tech crates on the minimap, and also reveals the location of the spider bots once you're close enough to them. I just wish I'd known about this skill before I spent so much time aimlessly swinging around New York, but given how much fun swinging around actually is, I'm not that bothered, and honestly, it took me about an hour to do all of the districts. Beating the story mode rewards you with an additional difficulty setting that you can then toggle on or off at any given moment. I consider this ultra hard difficulty its own reward, as beating the game with it doesn't reward the player with anything extra. It exists for those who want more to do, which is never a bad thing. The first Spider-Man game, despite having more trophies than this one does, is one of the most platinum games on PlayStation. I have to assume that Sony saw that and wanted to throw players a bone by making this game even easier and more enjoyable to platinum. Heck, even Miles Morales has more trophies than Spider-Man 2, and they're more difficult to earn. Earning all 42 trophies here was a genuine pleasure. It's a very painless experience that still pushes the player a little outside their comfort zone. And by the time you earn the platinum, you'll probably have all the in-game currency you need to unlock all the additional suit patterns. Completing any game can be a daunting task, but completing Spider-Man 2 makes doing so memorable and enjoyable. If you made it this far in the video, suffice to say, you know how I feel about this. This is such a good-ass game. Chances are, if you have a PS5, you probably already are playing the game. I just want to take an opportunity for a second and say the following sentence. I f***ing enjoyed the shit out of completing Spider-Man 2. Thank you again to Sony for providing me with the code, and the completion experience proved to me that I am always ready for more Spider-Man content. I give this game an enthusiast completionist rating of completed. If you like this video, check out my other content on different Spider-Man games. There's so much more than you would expect. See you later.